Let's see if we are working. Okay, let's see if we are online here. And are we working on YouTube?
Yep.
And looks like we are not working on here, so let me just
You're working on YouTube.
work on YouTube but not on the live chat, so let me just fix this. Okay, live chat in premium area, having YouTube error. Follow along here. See, now that's working just fine. That's weird. I don't know why that's having an issue right now, but there we go. And if you follow along there, I'll still monitor the live chat on here. I will still, not the best way to start off the live.
Something maybe update.
I don't know. There's something, for some reason, there's some sort of weird error that's showing up from YouTube. It's not anything with the website or anything.
Is that what I'm seeing behind you?
Click here when live stream. No. I don't know what that is. I don't know. It looks like they updated stuff.
Yeah.
That's good. We'll follow along and answer questions from here still. Okay, so yeah, there's not much I could really do about. There is an audio feed to the premium, but not video. Okay, well, turn off the audio feed, and just watch the video. I don't know what's causing that at all. The only thing I could think of is I'm going to try a quick fix. So stand with me. Not the best way to start the night, but let's take a look and see what we can do here with this error. And it kind of mirrors the way this winter has gone. Errors everywhere. Not much can really be done about it, but let's see. Oh, hold it. I think I might have found a solution here. Okay. Let's see if that worked. And it's loading. Oh, there it is. Reload. Okay. See? We found a way. So we found a way to fix the problem. There we go. So can't give up, right? Okay, so let's talk about the evolution of our pattern going forward now that we've fixed that. Let's see, where do we start? Well, first of all, we have a series of cold fronts coming in, all right, and we're seeing that right now with our observations, which I'll share in a moment. We have an Arctic air mass on the way. We have a lot of snow and ice developing in the southern plains. In fact, here, let me just fix that here. Okay, so here's our observations. Our cold air is bleeding in. You can see the setup here. What's frustrating about this for me as a forecaster is that we are so close to this being a far more significant winter weather pattern, but it just didn't take place. Oh, good, it fixed. Oh, good. I'm glad everything fixed in the premium section. I don't know what the hell happened there, but it's been one of those days, right? When I take a look at this pattern here, it's so close yet so far away in terms of the way that this weather pattern has taken shape. We went over that in December. We were 6 hours out from a major storm. And now, why is this pattern not going to produce significant snowfall? Aside from the dusting, this is how bad this winter has been. Everyone got excited, including myself this morning, including my wife, right? You ran like, oh my God, it's snowing outside.
I was just telling you because
Yeah.
I was happy for you.
Yes.
You know?
It's like it's finally snowing. There's a dusting on the ground. I got snow on top of my car. It is a wonderful thing. That's how bad this winter has been. And the thing is, this pattern is so close to taking shape. The reason why it's not this time is because you see this feature right here. Let's zoom in. See this right here? This convergence and confluence that is setting up right here is limiting, it's causing convergence and confluence just over the Ohio River Valley and Mid-Atlantic, causing sinking air and crushing the potential for precipitation for our neck of the woods. And that's why everything's getting suppressed to the south. The pattern, if we have looked at this pattern, let's say we've seen this pattern showing up in the model guidance 15, 20 days out, right? We'd all would be looking at this and saying, wow, this has the potential of really producing a lot of active weather with snow, sleet, rain. And it is for, unfortunately, the Southern Plains and for the Tennessee River Valley, just not us. And again, this is a perfect example of how when you're doing the seasonal forecasting, how you look at this and you say, okay, there's a lot of potential here. This has a high threat potential of featuring above normal snowfall and an active weather pattern with, what did I say, waves of low pressure developing out of Oklahoma and heading towards the Mid-Atlantic coast. Well, they are, but just a little bit further south. And so this is a pattern that ends up being a miss. Now, the one thing we are really concerned about is the advance of Arctic air. The pattern that's evolving here is featuring the tropospheric polar vortex, which is this puppy down here. When you see this signal showing up on your model guidance, that is some really, really cold air, because what you have is significant height falls developing in this environment, which causes rapid cooling and supports 850 millibar temperatures that are just brutally cold. I mean, you're talking about pushing to around minus 24, minus 26, minus 30 degrees Celsius, all the way down to minus 40 degrees Celsius. That leads to the introduction of the type of cold air where you're below zero. And that's why we're very concerned about the wind chills you're setting up for Friday night to Saturday morning. Let me be very clear for anyone that's wondering if they should go out Friday night. We are making plans to get everything done that we need to get done for the weekend on Friday afternoon, because Friday evening and Saturday is a no-go period of weather. In other words, we're staying indoors, we're going to have hot cocoa, and we're going to relax. Because there's no way that you should, if you could avoid going out on Friday night and Saturday, I would strongly suggest doing so, because you're talking about wind chills that are below zero. Minus 5, minus 9, minus 8. When you have that type of cold air, it doesn't take long at all for you to have frostbite and serious damage to your skin and to your ligaments. And this is the type of cold air where you could lose a finger. If you don't have gloves on, if you don't have protection for your ears, a lot of people, they lose the top of their ear and the bottom of the ear, the earlobe, because they don't think of putting on something to cover their ears, and they get severe frostbite. So it's a serious problem. So I would definitely use caution going out Friday night into Saturday morning. Personally, I'm staying in. I'm even skipping the gym. I'm not taking the chance, because this is the type of cold weather that can really get you hurt. Okay, so just take my word for it. Stay indoors. Then there's a question of, and of course I'm going to be answering all your questions, so keep on sending them in. There's a question about a storm development, and I've gotten a couple of emails, and I wrote about this in the Long Range Thoughts. of why I have serious doubts of this becoming anything significant. But I will say this. During this time period, the polar vortex is going to be consolidating again. In fact, we can go right here. So you see how it kind of consolidates and starts to strengthen. That's going to pull your polar and Arctic air northward. And we're going to be in a pattern transition as a result. Meanwhile, La Nina, although it's weakening, will still have some influence. So when you have this type of pattern transition taking place, and let me go, I can find it, there it is. When you have this type of pattern transition taking place, you can end up with a very fast-moving, powerful storm. Typically, you have to have everything fall together just right. I know we've heard this before. But if you're going to have a storm, this would be the time period to have that storm. With that said, well, you've guys seen this story before. What's the biggest problem with this pattern when you take a look at this? Ding, ding, ding. This trough on the west. Whenever you have a trough on the west coast like that, you're going to push the storm east. Now, there is some support from the ensemble guidance for a storm on the east coast. But let me warn you before you start seeing this on social media everywhere. I know it's already floating around. This solution is only supported by 3 of the 51 ensemble choices on the European guidance, 1 on the GFS ensemble guidance, and 0 on the GFS operational. And then, of course, we have the European version of this. And also, I should point out, if I could pull up the temperature plot here, or it's somewhere around here. Ah, there it is. During this time period, you have cold air having to rush in, which is never a good sign with a storm if you're looking for accumulating snowfall. So what I'm doing here, and this is really important, it's a very important lesson for everyone to learn, especially if you're a young meteorologist. Typically, when you're a young meteorologist, what you do, because you love storms, is look for all the reasons why a storm will happen. And it's fun, it's exciting, and you can look at it and say, oh, well, this could go right, that could go right, this could bomb out, we could have a historic storm. Some individuals try to compare every storm to a previous historic storm, which sounds fun, it's exciting, gives you nice little thoughts in your head, snowfall falling everywhere, but it is fool's gold. What you want to do is the other way around. What you want to do is find reasons why a storm won't happen. Write them down, and then as you get closer, you can cross off each reason why the storm won't happen. If you do it that way, you're more likely to have a more accurate forecast as you get 7 days out, 5 days out, and so on and so forth. So what that forces you to do is to be more critical of the data coming in and not jump the gun when you're 7 to 10 days out and you're seeing all these snow forecasts floating around. It makes you more skeptical. And being skeptical is the most important thing a scientist can be, because it makes you question everything. And when you question everything, then you're more likely to find the truth and provide accurate information. So what we're doing right now is looking at all the factors that can go wrong in this scenario. And one of those, of course, is the fact you have this trough coming into the west coast, which would more likely kick this storm out to the east. Also, in order to pull this cold air in, well, you have to have perfect timing interaction between this short wave here and this polar air mass here. And we all know how wonderful the timing has been all year with these storms. So, when you look at this, these are the factors you want to look at when you get closer to 7 days out, 5 days out, to say, okay, we know that the pattern is, this is a favorable time period for a potential storm if everything worked out perfectly, but are the factors that would limit that potential still present? And then you go from there. As far as the pattern going forward, well, okay, let's just tackle this little feature right here. Why are we seeing all this massive warm air showing up in the model guidance? What's going on here? So here's essentially what's happening here. You have your Arctic air trapped up here. Your polar air is trapped here. What this is a polar air mass. This is your Arctic air mass. When you take a look at the 500 millibar pattern here, what you really have is your polar jet stream locking up your polar and Arctic air. This features more of a wet Pacific air mass that comes in from the northern Pacific. And as it's moving across the country, it rapidly moderates. So, because it's coming off the Rocky Mountains and then traveling across the plains, it modifies significantly. Combine that with the time of year, and you're easily talking about 40s, 50s, and possibly even 60s showing up for mid-February. All because the air mass is coming into the west coast, is downsloping off the Rockies, and then racing across the plains. So that is how you end up with this very warm solution showing up in the guidance. Now, this is probably overdone here when you're seeing this. This looks possibly a bit much. The one reason why I kind of am showing this and kind of leaning towards this direction is because of a lack of a snowpack. If we actually had a snowpack in place, I would say, okay, this is way too aggressive. It's not going to be that warm. But the fact that we have, look, as it stands right now, unless our storm works out, you have no snowpack. There's nothing to limit the moderation of this air mass. So it looks like Valentine's Day looks to be rather warm as it stands right now, based on the data I'm seeing right now. Again, this is Arctic air. This is a polar Pacific air mass, and this is a modified Pacific air mass. So that's essentially what is evolving here. Well, that's right. Tomorrow is Groundhog's Day, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Well, all I can say is don't drive angry. I think, what is the groundhog going to do? I think the groundhog is going to be very annoyed that you're pulling it out of its home while it's taking a nap. That's why I'm surprised. And this is what I'm surprised about, that groundhog has not bitten anyone yet.
Yeah, it has.
It has? Well, good. I don't blame it. I'd be mad. I'd bite someone too if they ripped me out of my home to ask me what the weather was in the middle of the night when I'm sleeping. That's just rude.
Forecast calls for pissed off.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay, let's see here. Now, we're going to answer some questions on the live chat. And by the way, I got actually a question about this for the spring and summer. For some of you who are new to the channel, yes, we do have live chat throughout the spring and summer. We talk a lot about the evolving pattern, the latest technology going on in meteorology. We follow baseball as we rant about that. Let's see what's going on with the Mets and the Yankees and the Phillies. And, of course, severe thunderstorms. Hurricane season, yep. Definitely thunderstorms. And, of course, I always get the question, are we going to see a lot of tornadoes? And my answer, as always, is I have no idea, and neither does anyone else. But we'll get to that. God knows we're going to get those questions. All right, so let's check out YouTube Wave not interacting properly. Exactly. Okay, good. So everything's working. There has been plenty of winter this year, just not in the Mid-Atlantic towards the coast. Exactly. We've seen some in the higher elevations, certainly by the eastern Great Lakes. We've seen plenty of winter weather down towards the Tennessee River Valley. You can't tell anyone in Texas and Oklahoma they haven't seen winter because they've seen plenty of that. Let me tell you something. I lived in Oklahoma. I lived around Oklahoma City. What's evolving here with the sleet and snow is akin to us having like 20 inches of snow. They are not built for this. They cannot handle this. The last time I was there and we had an inch of snow, they basically said, well, we'll wait for it to melt. Literally, that's what they told everybody. Wait for it to melt. You could be shut down for days, and they're not used to driving in this type of weather. So this is a real disaster for them dealing with this type of winter weather pattern. FYI, did you see those 40-degree temperatures over Russia at 10 millibar? Yeah, absolutely. Let's go up to 10 millibars, and we'll pull up the temperatures. Zoom out. There's your warming. Look at that. There's your stratospheric warming. Now that stands out. Now, here's a great question, all right? We know we have the stratospheric warming. We know we have the stretching, right? It's not strong enough to reverse the winds, which if that had happened, then what you would have had is a complete destruction of the polar vortex in the troposphere, and that would have led to a much colder and very interesting pattern for not only the rest of February, but also March. In this case, what we have is stretching. So, first of all, the reason why this isn't going to have a complete destruction of the polar vortex is that while this is intense, it's not expansive enough. It doesn't have as much of impact. So, it causes some stretching, it causes warping of the polar vortex, but much like when you pull a rubber band, as the influence of that stretching goes away, the rubber band snaps back. And that's why we're going to see a rapid warming taking place for our weather pattern, because the polar vortex is going to snap back quickly, and that's going to pull all the Arctic air mass northward. But yeah, I mean, it's very impressive warm pool setting up right here. I mean, that really stands out compared to the rest of the troposphere and stratosphere. And you can see here on the winds what that looks like. With that warming influencing it, what it does is that it slows down and stretches the jet right here. Remember, when the polar vortex contracts, it speeds up faster and faster. And much like a ice skater on the ice, when they spin and they go around faster and faster, well, that centrifugal force is pulling everything towards the center. So that pull is pulling all your cold air masses back towards the Arctic. Whereas if you have this warping taking place, it allows your Arctic air masses to drop south, which is what we're going to be seeing in a couple of days. Never seen the 10 millibar vortex being both strong and that far off center off the pole. Yeah, I mean, this is what happens when you have this displacement, this two-wave displacement. It's pretty impressive. I vaguely recall that 92-93 had a lot of misses and not much snow before the March 93 superstorm. That is true. The March 93 superstorm was a great example of everything coming together just right. As I said to a lot of premium members the past couple of days, this type of pattern can produce a very impressive, epic, powerful storm if everything comes together just right. The problem is that, well, the reason why we remember those storms is that they're so rare to come together, especially in patterns like this. Typically, no one really remembers the winter that causes that's around those storms, but a lot of those winters were pretty quiet until everyone gets smacked with that one storm. Whether that happens this year, I don't have a lot of confidence that it will. It's possible. I can't rule it out 100%, but I don't have a lot of confidence. I'm sure as heck not going to run around saying, hey, look, this is definitely going to happen, and we're going to watch it, and look at the tropical convection. This means this and that. That's not a good idea. Just because the theme for this pattern just has not worked out in that way. And I'd rather not lead you down to a lot of hype and phantom storms, which is why I started off with what I started off with. The polar vortex, when it has stretched and done near splits, had oriented off a bit for the most part of the really cold air in Asia most of the winter. Yeah, the way that the polar vortex is stretched as well has been just slightly too far east for us. Slightly. This whole winter weather pattern, so I say, has been a huge lesson on how a slight adjustment of just a little bit on various factors can make or break an entire winter. I agreed completely. Could the interaction between the very warm air at 10 millibars and the very cold air in the vortex itself cause disruption to the 10 millibar vortex and keep the 70 millibar vortex weak? No, because the warming that we're seeing is not going to be sustained, and it loses its support. Let me see if I can pull that up here. Right here. Okay, so it starts to lose its support right here. You see how it kind of swings back here and heads back towards the equator? See that signal? See, that means that the warming really loses its support in order to disrupt the polar vortex. And as a result, you don't have that breaking point. What you want to see is for this feature right here to go straight up to the top of the stratosphere and completely obliterate the polar vortex. But you don't see that because you don't get the support that you need to produce that. The way this winter has gone, I expect the groundhog to be dropped and run off to tomorrow morning. That would be kind of funny, to be honest with you. Sometimes rubber bands break when they snap back. Yes, but not this one. It would be the 30th anniversary of the 93 storm. That's true too. Look, why do I get the feeling I'm going to see a lot of posts on social media and whatnot about the 93 storm? Like that's going to be the key hallmark saving grace for a lot of snow lovers. Okay, let's think about this here. Well, we do have a weakening La Nina. Got that for you. There is going to be another stretching of the polar vortex in March, like late February into March. So you got that going for you. Okay, so I'll put it to you like this. If you're going to see a storm take place, it would be one where you have a retreating polar Arctic air mass. And it would be a one and done storm. Like, you'll basically end up with this very heavy wet snowfall that literally will melt the next day. But I'm warning you guys, that stretching that the whole thing froze.